Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And whosoever lives and believes in me shall never die. The eternal God is your dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Friends, we gather in the presence of God to claim the comfort, peace, and joy that comes to us through our faith as we celebrate the life of Larry Wiemers. We come together in grief, acknowledging our human loss. May God grant us grace, that in pain we may find comfort, in sorrow, hope, and in death, resurrection. I invite you as we begin this celebration of Larry's life to stand and sing together, Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee, number 89 in the hymnal. You may be seated. As we celebrate Larry's life and settle into this moment of worship, I offer this prayer. God, our Creator, from whom we come and unto whom our spirits return, Thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations. Thou art our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Grant us thy blessing in this hour, and enable us so to put our trust in thee, that our hearts may grow calm and our spirits be comforted. Lift our eyes beyond the shadows of earth and help us to see the light of eternity. So may we find grace and strength for this and every time of need. In the Spirit of Christ we pray. Amen.
Okay. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, and it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. And the second reading is Isaiah 41:10 and 40:28 to 31. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is everlasting, God, the creator of the heavens, of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary, and they will walk and not be faint.
Faithfulness, your shield. will raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, and make you shine like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand. For unto his angels he's given a command to guard you in all of your ways. Upon their hands they will raise you up, let you dash your foot against the stone. And he will raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, and make you shine like the sun, and hold you in his hand, and hold you in the palm of his hand.
Larry Wiemers was such a strong, caring man, a man who valued relationships more than material things, a role model who lived his life to its fullest. Today I'm going to read a poem entitled The Dash by Linda Ellis. Larry had asked that it be read at his memorial service, and I'm sure that he wanted us to listen to its message and apply it to our own lives. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between the years. For that dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth. And now only those who love them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering this special dash might only last a little while. So, when your eulogy is read, with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash?
This is a sacred time, and this is a sacred place. This is Larry and Pat's church home, and we're glad to welcome you in for this celebration of Larry's life. We come apart from the busyness of life to truly celebrate Larry Wiemers. Together, we acknowledge his passing and join in this community of love, in a spirit of comfort and healing. We embrace Larry's family and closest friends, surrounding them with prayer as they move ahead without Larry physically present any longer. 83 years, yet the time was too short. We lift him up to the Lord and give thanks for the life Larry lived. It's been almost 8 weeks since Larry passed, and many months since he was out and about, able to navigate and enjoy you all in the ways he loved to meet and greet you. Larry loved to socialize. And it's been sad for everyone that he was no longer able to do so in these last months among us. It's been an arduous journey for the family, and we applaud them for the constancy of their beautiful care and the incredible support they continued to offer one day at a time. For Larry, pain is ended. Peace abides. Larry now graces heaven with his inimitable personality and his amazing spirit. I'm certain that the blessings of his love continue in a new form in the very realm of God. Hats off to him. A big high five. And bravo, as the Lord calls out to Larry, well done, good and faithful servant. Larry and Pat have been an integral part of the life of this congregation since 1964. We know and appreciate all they've done over so many years as dedicated members of the congregation. There is no committee they haven't served, and nothing they haven't done at one time or another to help this church along the way. And whatever they did, together and apart, they did well. The high fives Larry offered each child as they left the sanctuary each Sunday morning were a visible high five. But we have all experienced the emotional and spiritual high fives he delivered to us through the interest he showed in our lives, the spirit with which he greeted us, and the respect, gratitude, and kindness he offered. He affirmed the worth and self-worth of each child of God. Albert Schweitzer wrote, "It's important that we strive to have light in ourselves." Truly, I don't think Larry had to strive. He simply looked to God through daily devotion, and God's light was shining brightly in him. It was reflected in his smile, in his face, and through his presence. How do I know he looked to God? Look at the wear and tear on his Bible and those devotional books in the midst of the memorabilia in Criswell Hall as we visit there this afternoon. Larry and Pat knew each other at 10 years of age. Imagine that. And imagine then later becoming husband and wife and continuing in covenant for 60 years. Well done, good and faithful couple. Enter into the joy of your family. The joy of Pat and Larry's union is reflected in the faces of their children. Pam, Shelley, Sherry, it's obvious that you all were blessed together to be together in this life. Now, it's not my task to tell the stories today. It's my job to safeguard this sacred time for others, for Ben, Bob, Pam, and friends among you who would like to say a word or two. Yes, we will be passing a microphone, so some of you will have an opportunity to add a story along the way. I simply welcome you into this time of celebration and appreciation. Though grief is real, you are cordially invited to the best of your ability into a happy place, that together we may do justice to a man who lived an engaged, loving, and beautiful life. Augustine wrote, "Inasmuch as love grows in you, so beauty grows, for love is the beauty of the soul." As Larry's beautiful soul traveled from those green beginnings in Nebraska, where he was born on November 28, 1939, to the end of his earth journey on the Central Coast on May 9th, 2023, Larry's life indeed was blessed. In Nebraska, Texas, and California, cities like Oxnard, Ridgecrest, Trona, and Arroyo Grande, he continued to be blessed through an incredible network of relationships and a lifetime of rich experiences. The greatest gift and blessing of all was Patty Westfall, whose initials didn't change as she became Patty Wiemers at All Faith Chapel in China Lake in 1962. And the blessings they created together took form as Pam, Shelley, and Sherry came to birth. When I've met young couples over the years about to be married, in that "I only have eyes for you" stage of love, repeatedly I've reminded and encouraged them to keep the other fires burning with friends and family, because all those other relationships, interests, and activities feed a marriage. And a great marriage is a springboard to fueling and feeding those other friendships and relationships, so that love continues to glow and grow. Because of the love shared in this marriage and family, God's grace spilled over into the lives of many, many others. You will hear the many ripples of Larry's love in action as others come to share a word with you. Honey, Dad, Papa, Uncle Larry became teacher, coach, churchman, community leader, friend, and neighbor, doing all sorts of wonderful things in life, from raising cows and pigs to cheering on and inspiring children and students, while continuing to pour life and love into that crown achievement, his wife and children. They all received the blessing of Larry's personhood and presence, his deep spirituality, and the love of God that fed and fueled the beauty of his life. So here we are. Thank you for being here. Your presence speaks your love. And together we give thanks to God for sharing with us the amazing life of Larry Wiemers. Amen. And now I would like to invite forward Ben Levesque as our eulogist.
So I have a presentation and some comments that I'd like to make, and I think I'd like to start with two things, and please ask for a little forgiveness if I get a little teary at times. I remember this church, my gosh, I mean, there were so many Christmases when we would come to candlelight service, and then, of course, the young cousins, when the time came to do the candles, we'd get in trouble because we would be doing different things with them. And by the way, that was not part of the presentation. I just remembered it. Like, oh my goodness. Thank you all for coming. My name is Ben, and Uncle Larry was my uncle. Larry was my uncle. Today, as Mary has already indicated, we've got Pat and the kids, and we've got grandkids and sisters. Oh, can you hear me? Can I get a sound check? Can you hear me in the back? Got it. All right. Okay. Thank you, Aunt Vicki. So I actually have two of these, two sheets of paper. One of them is for with the glasses, and one of them is for without. But I am going to use the one with glasses. So, we all have different memories of Larry through our different relationships, and that's already started. Be it daughter, or grandkid, a niece or a nephew, extended family, colleague, or friend. And Larry wore a lot of different hats, and there are a lot of different experiences, yet similarities. But this is amazing to have this many people here on a Saturday afternoon, and it speaks volumes. So get just a little interaction right now, because by the way, I recognize some of you over the many years in this church. You look a little different. I do too. So with a quick show of hands, and maybe just keep your hand up, who knew Larry as an educator, shop teacher, administrator, counselor, driver's ed teacher, ROP director, district expulsion administrator? Did anybody in this room ever get suspended by Larry? No one's going. No one's going to admit that. All right, who knew him as coach? Outstanding. Yeah. Other than Christy, anybody else here from Trona?
Me, myself, and I.
Trona. Wonderful. Okay. All right. So, how about pig farmer? How many guys knew Larry as a farmer and a rancher? Because by the way, I know that they're different. How many people remember Tag, that darn bull? And then, by the way, remember you had to discipline that guy with a ball peen hammer. It wouldn't just boom. All right. How about 4-H? Future farmers. By the way, that's big. How about Rotary? Who here? You guys. This group right here of Rotary people are phenomenal. I'll go into a little bit on a story. Church friends? Church? Friends? Just look, I mean, there are a lot of different people here who've come to celebrate. So, and I too wanted to add just a little bit. Judy talked about the dash, and I know that was really important. And so I would encourage you guys to Google it at some point in time. Those of you who do Google, Larry had his dash, but I think it's more like a marathon in terms of the different kinds of things that he did along the way and how he impacted us and how he was doing some things really pretty purposefully. Some of the significant impact points along the way, ranging from a simple life-changing conversations in the kitchen before the remodel, right by that pass-through, and really there were three people in that room, and it was Larry, it was Uncle Bob, and it was me. And there were some things going on in my life that thank you. It was really, really simple. Had a huge impact on me, as I know that there are probably things that impacted you. It was silly, it was dumb, but it was big. In addition to that, he also had an impact of touching thousands of lives with his endeavors and his commitment to sustainable farming and clean water. And that started with him, doing a pig thing. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more. Thank you, Father John. That's big. Larry would teach, and it seemed like, you were the only one that he was talking to, whether it was a conversation and communication with others, with an analogy maybe of about how using toothpaste to pay the... Okay, I'm not the only one who knows about that communication analogy, being like a tube of toothpaste, because once you squeeze that, you can't put it back, so you want to think about that. Or maybe a faith conversation, and part of his faith conversation was about a freeway, and there are all kinds of off-ramps and exits, because our faith journey is not a straight line. I mean, it goes like this, but for every off-ramp, there are on-ramps that are available to us to come back on, and that was part of his conversation. And communication. My earliest memories of Larry, and by the way, I'm 64, and I'm one of the kids. So some of you guys who are his friends out there, I know you're older than me. So anyway, Larry was a big, imposing guy. I mean, he really was. I remember the shop smells. I mean, whether it was wood shop, whether it was his shop, whether it was his barn. He had lots, he was a collector of items, and he had lots of stuff just hung all over the walls and the beams, and it was all done in a really organized, he couldn't throw anything away. I think he told me one time that, his dad was the one who taught him about the hanging organization thing. So additionally, he was an immaculate kind of craftsman. So there was this playhouse down the hill that he built for the girls, and that was down the hill before the ranch, and it was amazing the way that thing was built. Oh, by the way, he also did some things with an oak tree by building up a fencing around it and putting dirt in that thing, which you're not supposed to do to oak trees, but he did it. And the tree lived too. I mean, so anyway, he built this playhouse for the girls, and he to exacting house specs. And this playhouse had French doors, and it ended up getting transported, up to the ranch. And Eric, you'll remember the playhouse because your tortilla went over it. I know a guy whose tortilla went over the house and that oak tree that used to be behind it. So anyway, it was. The French doors the playhouse got transported as is up to the ranch. When we were kids, that thing was huge. It sat there at the end of the big playground where the electric fence was, separated, where the kids were supposed to go and where they weren't supposed to go. And so maybe one of the first family secrets. I mean, one of the games we used to play was to, go grab the electric fence. It was a game of chicken because it was alternating current. So who was gonna let go of that thing first? All right. So speaking of French doors, I've already mentioned that Larry was an immaculate craftsman, wanting to and being very capable of doing things himself. Not only did he build these French doors for the playhouse, but he also built French doors on the girls' room in the house. And part of the reason and design behind that, because he was a very protective father, and he also wanted to protect some time, for him and Pat, just to make sure that the girls were restricted. But they were climbers, and so they knew how to throw pillows up on the bottom side of the French door just to climb over and get out of their locked room when they were kids. So maybe I'm telling a few family secrets. I was coached, and I kind of sort of promised that I wouldn't tell a lot of different things. That'll happen for later. So Larry was a competitor, a teacher. He was a college athlete, played both tennis and basketball. Pete and Danny. Yeah, you guys were legends. He loved you. I mean, it was, Yep. And it's clear that everybody in this room has some kind of emotional tie to Larry. So anyway, he went to school at Cal Poly, and then he went to UCLA. He walked on when John Wooden was first starting right there, and this is a revelation that I found out. And then, some things happened, and he was much more. sort of a year that didn't really exist, so he came back to Cal Poly, up to SLO. And additionally, he was a water guy. He was a surfer back in the day. Man, oh man, I remember his longboard, and sort of transitioned that into a huge wakeboard. And you take that out to the lake, behind the boat. And of course, this is after all the chores got done, even though it was planned, because running a farm is tough, a lot of work. I also remember our competitions. Larry was a competitor, and by the way, he wouldn't let you win. Didn't matter if you were 4 years old and you were playing checkers. Nope. If you beat him, you beat him. And and by the way, there are a ton of awesome lessons being told at that. So, one of the things I remember is we used to have these a food eating contest, and so my sister, mom, and I, we lived with Larry and Pat and the girls at one point in time in our life. So do you guys remember that pancake eating contest? Oh my God, I was not gonna let that guy beat me. And I mean I'm a young kid too, and so we got to 12 to 14 pancakes at a bite. 15, and I took a bite. That might have been the first time that he ever let anybody beat him. And of course, there was peanut butter that went on every bite. And then at lunchtime, when you came in after doing chores, there was actually mayonnaise that actually used to, back in the day when health wasn't, mayonnaise on every bite of sandwich. So it was, one segment at a time, Pat and Larry's life, he was a huge cyclist. And when I'm talking about that, I mean they were tandem cyclists. What commitment, skill, trust they had with each other. And I guess that's sort of an analogy for their life. Commitment, skill, trust. What a testament to their relationship. My wife wouldn't get on the back of a bike either. He was born a coach. He had a couple of his players, I've already referenced, play professional. And that was a big deal for him and some of the impact. And maybe some of you, to different kinds of elements, he's had an impact on your life, whether, to whatever level. You know what it is. I don't know all the stories. His family and friends benefited from the tennis court. So one time when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and we were living there, we'd probably just come back from Japan, Larry ended up borrowing some Pop Warner pads for me. And at that point in time in my life, I wasn't an athlete at all. So he took me out one Saturday, and I don't know if it was a JV or a varsity game. It was a varsity game. It's my story. It was a varsity game. So he got permission to come on the sidelines. And by the way, it was on the football field below the high school, below the bus barn. I don't know if that's still there, but that's where it was. We went out on the field. I don't know. Some receiver did an out pattern. Quarterback threw him the ball. I'm standing there on the sidelines, all pumped up in my pads. Receiver goes up, catches the ball. The DB actually just pushes him out of bounds, so he didn't. It was incomplete pass. But I'm thinking, I can do this. Larry's brought me. He suited me up. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to go in there and tackle those guys. They were men. I'm this, and they were. Oh my goodness! But what a way to dial in to an individual's motivation. So I guess my question is, my comment is, think about sometime, Larry did something for you. What got you pumped? Think about that as we celebrate him, and what are you going to do going forward? Maybe that has a little bit to do with the dash or the marathon. How do you take that motivation forward to honor him? His commitment and integrity led him to a selection to the local AG Athletic Hall of Fame. So that's a pretty big deal. He was a football timekeeper for 50 years. And by the way, I don't know how many of you out there, who out there's ever been a timekeeper on that? Listen, being a timekeeper is a tough job, and it takes integrity. It really, really does. There are all kinds of opportunities to start the clock slow or start the clock fast. And he didn't do that. And that's full of integrity, because that speaks to him, his character. It speaks to the athletes on both sides. to their families, their schools, their community, and even statewide at the CIF levels. I mean, and doing that for 50 years. So I don't know if you guys know the story about how the ranch got started. So somebody said they knew Larry as, oh gosh, what is that? The driver's ed. So anyway, Larry and I were talking, I don't know, a couple months ago, and he told the story, and I think he told it once before, but he was driver's ed teacher for the high school. He took his kids out driving, or students out driving. They stopped out up on Ormonde by the ranch to change drivers. He got out, stretched his legs, saw a piece of plywood lying on the ground. He went over and kicked it over, as Larry would do. There was a phone number on it, said for sale. Made that call, and voila, the ranch is born. Just by being curious and going over and seeing this piece of plywood that was upside down, kicked over. That's how, maybe it was a God thing. Maybe. So Pat and Larry have a solid group of friends built upon years of giving to others. So we used to have a family reunion that was an outgrowth of the spending Christmases together as a family. I mentioned that when we were talking about, I used to get in trouble for doing things with that candle Christmas Eve service. So there's a group of friends, and I think I recognize a few of you out here that would come up to the ranch and barbecue, do the Santa Maria barbecue. And the family would be about 50 to 70 people, and what a gift to Pat and Larry. For this group of people to come up and give, and the question is why? Well, we know why. Larry gave, and it was received with gifts, and it was out of love. I'm going to bypass my story about the avocado ranch, or the avocado orchard being planted twice, and the deer. The deer, those varmints, they're actually known as a single word. Up at the house, they're called the deer. Down at the barn, we called them something else. So here's another family secret about how Larry cared passionately about his daughters and was really protective. We started with the French doors, trying to keep them keep them in their room. So family legend has it, and there might be one or two of you guys out there that was involved in this legend. So at one point in time, there was some boy who was not treating one of his daughters correctly. So Larry and one of his two friends, they might have gotten into his ranch truck and drove down to have a conversation with that boy. And somehow his truck and the boy's truck ended up on an Arroyo Grande sidewalk. And Larry and his unnamed friends got out and had a conversation with that young man and let him know that how to treat a young woman. Family and friends were paramount to Larry, although he wasn't necessarily the front person. He was really critical in being in the background behind the curtain, like Oz. He didn't want the attention, but man, I got to tell you, he was pulling the levers, pushing the strings. He knew how to do that. So yeah, we used to do Christmases. I already talked about it at the ranch until grandchildren came into the picture and the events just got too large and too complicated. But he really did a lot of stuff behind the scenes. This is sort of the place that the kids. Now, when I'm talking kids, I'm talking about my generation. So it's like it's the sisters and Scott and Matt and me and my sister who couldn't come. But this is where we would bring TK. Okay, so maybe there's going to be some kind of generational skip right here. This is the place that we brought our we brought our significant others to the ranch at this point in time, and really it was about family validation and voting. So, and by the way,
you were mean.
So I actually, and by the way, there was a gong in the house, and so I actually recall a penalty for one of these suitors for kissing in the kitchen gadget aisle. It's got to be somebody in that front row. And then there were some other things that happened. And by the way, Larry is behind the scenes, orchestrating some of these things. And so there was this other green giant that used to show up and sort of catch or block tortillas and stuff. And then there was this, then one of those kids made this phenomenally stupid comment about an A-team player. That's an inside private joke. By the way, that guy ended up marrying that A-team player and has been married for over 30 years. Oh, what a knucklehead. But Larry was sort of helpful in getting those things going. So, look, you think about Papa, Uncle Larry, when we'd all arrive at the ranch, and now come along the junior cousins, and they're sort of like, we got some here and a whole row right there. So they're our kids, and Larry would love it when the grandkids and nieces and nephews would come up, and he'd put them in the back of the trailer behind his lawnmower, I guess, was really sort of a work tractor. And he'd take them all over the ranch, and oh man, the kids loved that, and he loved that when we were in that trailer, just having fun, screaming, yelling. So remember how you guys felt when you were in there? Huh? It's like, oh man, it's like, wow. Now Larry and I had conversations about that. He loved the feeling of his grandkids and his nieces and nephews coming to the ranch. And by the way, he built that ranch. He did some things on that ranch that were very, very purposeful to creating a legacy, to creating family with people of values. So he was coaching very, very intentionally. It was fun going to Pat and Larry's house. That was by design. Working on his ranch / farm builds character and work ethic. When one of my kids became of age to come work hard, because I got to tell you, my kids don't know hard work. They've never worked on a ranch. But I asked him if I could send one of my sons over, and he actually questioned me. He said, "Look, I want to be the fun uncle. I want to be the good uncle. If you come and work for me, I have expectations, and it's going to be really pretty serious." So my boys didn't come. So in addition to, he was a giver. So in addition to being selected to the AG Athletic Hall of Fame, he was also awarded by the AG Chamber of Commerce with the prestigious Ken Talley Award for significant volunteer efforts with local youth. And I know, because I saw some, Rotarians out there raise your hand. He really liked working with you, and Larry's life was surrounded by really good people, and I want to commend you Rotarians for that. That was one of the groups. There were food pantry and all kinds of other things too. But I thank you, because sometimes you got to be surrounded by good people to help you along when you're doing life. So his hobby of raising pigs led to a significant engagement with the FAA, the 4-H, the Paso Fair. Ended up having a blue ribbon war. Made some money on that. That was unique. So there are lots of stories we have as a family, and maybe some of you out there staying up all night when the sows were furrowing. They were always bred in time to deliver, so they'd be about the right age to do the fair. So that meant that the sows were delivering over Christmas, and so you knew you made it if Larry asked you to help him with the pigs. So, which often meant staying up all night and a whole bunch of other things. There's a small select group of people here today, and I can't really name them. You in the front row, there are two of you in the front row, that assisted Larry with his ranch chores. Larry's pretty insistent on doing things correctly, and we all learned hard work. Working on a ranch, that's work. It's work. So digging ditches, redigging the same ditches, stringing fences, and a bunch of necessary work. And it's like, Larry's a wonderful guy, but when he's the boss, it's Larry's way or Larry's way. And then, of course, we'd come back up to the house and everything would be good and great, but, It's Larry's way or Larry's way. So, yeah, one of those workers has been recently promoted to a very high-level executive position in law enforcement. Congratulations. Well done. He learned to work hard. Larry was a gentleman pig farmer. I know a farm is agricultural and, you know, animals are ranch, but it sounds better to call him a pig farmer. Led him into many different areas of service to his community, to the world. His outgrowth of the pig farm led him to a relationship with Father John. And in terms of doing that, he had a significant, he and Pat have had a significant impact on the world, starting with, you know, how do you pig farm? How do you teach people to pig farm so that they can get more pigs, so that they can, the morbidity rate is not where it is. That sort of transitioned into some sustainable farming practices, clean water programs. I mean, that's a big deal. That's a big reach beyond just the Central Valley. You guys have seen it. I'm sure you know about it. He talked about it. Pat and Larry's legacy and reach has far exceeded the Central Valley. So Larry, you know, he not only tried to give others the benefit of the doubt, but he gave real significant importance in walking in other people's shoes. Because he knows that everybody has a different set of circumstances. And so we're all unique, we're all different, none of us are the same. We might have some of the same goals, but he really saw us. And we can be different. But I know you guys have many stories about how he touched you. He was a teacher in all different phases and elements of his life. He wore many hats. You actually see that. And there clearly are a lot of things that just haven't been mentioned. I'm doing this from my heart and my perspective, and that's just one piece in terms of sort of representing the family on how we love Larry. His intent was always to have impact for good. You know, whether you were on the court, whether you were on the field, whether you were in the classroom. He did a bunch of extra stuff and more stuff there that we're not talking about. He was quiet, generally behind-the-scene kind of guy, but boy did he have impact on our lives. On this Saturday afternoon, he clearly must have had some impact on your guys' lives too. Mine for sure, and I look and I see probably yours too. So why did Larry do that for us? And we for he? You know, we know, he loved us. Larry, Dad, Papa, Pig Boy, Car Boy, Uncle Larry, Mr. Wiemers, Coach, he left a legacy. He served others in his community through his support in a bunch of different areas. His family and friends who remember him. Larry just being Larry, depending on the hat that he was wearing. Larry was ready to go home and be with the Lord. Now, to be clear, we did not lose Larry. For when something is lost, you don't know where it is. He's not lost. We know where he is. And when it's our time, through faith, we'll get to see him again. We love him. We miss him. We will honor him. And we will see him. Thank you.
And Bob Christick is going to join us up here, followed by Pam.
Ben, that was outstanding. Like Paul Harvey said, now I know the rest of the story. And an outstanding story it is. Good afternoon, I'm Bob Christick. This is my wife, Vicki. Some time ago, we decided to adopt each other. As far as Larry and I. Vicki and I were married, but I wanted to adopt Larry. Two things we did that had an impact on our lives. We decided to adopt each other. That was unique in itself. but we spent a lot of time being truthful about our interrelationship with others. And he was a man of principle. When we visited the ranch, I knew Larry would have projects lined up. He did, and he taught me things like a city boy didn't know, like how to drive the tractor without going through a fence, like how to move pigs from one pen to another without being run over by a huge boar. I also assisted in the birthing of pigs, which Ben made reference to. Larry cautioned me not to pet, not to hug, or hand feed the mama pig. He also warned me not to use the word bacon around pigs. Larry was all family. When 9/11 happened, Larry's first thought was to gather all of the families and bring them to the safety of the ranch. Larry also had a sentimental side. In 1962, he was almost late for his own wedding. Everyone had gone ahead, and the only car available was his dad's 1937 Plymouth, nicknamed Matilda. He did make it to the church, as we all know. Eventually, Matilda was parked behind the big barn down near the pig pens. And some years later, Larry decided to restore Matilda. The car was mired in mud, dust, and debris. It took a tractor and a four-wheel drive vehicle to get Matilda free and towed up to the house. We were unable to see inside due to the cobwebs and dirt. Larry asked if I wouldn't mind cleaning out the interior. I thought, that shouldn't take too long. Open a door, sweep it out, and that'd be it. So the first thing I saw when I opened the door, after receiving odors that I wasn't used to, was a large mummified possum and countless mice, rats, and other critters we have yet to identify. I asked Larry for a hazmat suit, a pressure hose, and a flamethrower. Larry denied my request. He said, you might do that in the city, but not here. So he gave me a shovel, a rake, mask, and plastic bags. And that's where the restoration of Matilda started, cleaning it out. In some respects, Larry was predictable. You could count on at least 3 things each night: virgin margaritas, cool and yummy, the weather report at 5:30, and ice cream. Larry had a habit of getting up in the middle of the night, getting his half-gallon of ice cream out of the freezer, topping it off with chocolate sauce, and digging in as he sat in his chair with the explanation, and you've heard it, the family's heard it, oh my. Pat would occasionally join Larry for ice cream dates. Now, how close and romantic is that? I spent hours with Larry, eating ice cream, talking about everything and anything. In honor of Larry's passion for ice cream, Pat and the family would like you to join them for an old-fashioned ice cream social at the end of this program. I'm going to cut it a little short so I give Vicki an opportunity to reflect a couple things, and we know that there are some of you out there that want to help us with the rest of the story. Thank you.
Bob said it, and it's true, Ben as well, that Larry was all about family. And one of the things that he decided to implement was when a grandchild was at least 4 and could sort of write or print their name, at a reunion, they would get their footprints embedded into a cement stepping stone. And these stepping stones were then put along side of the flagpole in the yard. And every year that we came back for these reunions, our children and grandchildren, they would go and stand on their stepping stone. It's very touching. My children and grandchildren that were unable to come still talk about it to this day. The last time we had a reunion, we all marched in, and the grown-ups, the parents, were talking to each other, and without any prompting, all of our grandkids went over and stood on their stepping stone. I mean, we were verklempt. I mean, it was so touching. Now, the stepping stones sort of segue into a little bit of his pig farming capacity. Larry's pig farm's reputation had spread far and wide. We live a good 12 hours away, up almost into Oregon. And a girl, one of the daughters of a family up there, was at Poly, and the pig class came down to Larry's farm to check out the place down there, because it really was amazing, and they were very proud of it. And this girl called her sister and said, "You got to get down here and get your pig from this guy." So 12-hour drive later, this family came down, and Genevieve got her pig. And the family was walking on the grass with Pat and Larry, and Pat and Larry were showing them the stepping stones. And as they got a little further along, they looked down and saw Gavin, Audrey, Livia, all of our grandchildren saw their names in the stepping stones, and they said, "Why, we know some Christics." At which point Pat and Larry smiled and said, "Yeah, you do, don't you?" Well, the family, it was just the biggest part of his life. He loved his family, and we loved him.
Hello. Thank you. All right, well, gosh darn it, I kind of am glad I'm going last in the family, because there was a lot of laughter and levity, but boy, those are some hard acts to follow, so. So, our dad was a competitor and an athlete. He loved playing basketball and tennis, and as you've heard, he didn't just play, he played to win. And I had originally said, I hope there are some men here who my dad coached, but now I know that there are. And I'm sure that you would agree that our dad was a tough cookie. And he expected an awful lot of people. The great thing is that he had those same high standards for himself. And he never did anything at 100%. 100% was failure. It was minimum 110%. He required that you put in the hard work, but he had the right mix of discipline and encouragement. And you knew he was always in your corner, cheering you on. I remember being at the ranch, and I can't remember, so I'm getting to that age, my memory's failing me. So I can't remember if I was dating my now husband, Mike, or if we were married, but regardless, I looked at Mike and I said, I bet you a six-pack, my dad can beat you in basketball. Because to me, my dad was invincible. You better believe he was going to kick that this kid that was 28 years younger than me was going to kick his butt on that basketball court. It wasn't until many years later that my dad took me aside and looked at me and he said, when you said that, my eyes got wide like saucers, and I'm like, what the heck were you thinking? But to my cousin Ben's point, if you won rightfully so. My dad never gave anything. You earned it.
If you want to know the details of the story with a couple words I probably can't say in this hall, but I can I'll tell you more details of that 20 minutes.
So thanks, Dad, for coaching us on and off the court, in tennis and in life. For the hours upon hours you spent hitting tennis balls with us to ensure that we would be able to earn our place on the varsity team. Thanks for teaching us about hard work, discipline, and humility. Most of all, thank you for always being in our corner. Our dad taught us to dream big and to believe in ourselves. In elementary school, I vividly remember my dad, and he did this for all three of us, taking me to Fair Oaks Pharmacy to pick out a stuffed animal because I'd gotten straight A's, because an A- was failure. So it had to be A's or A+, and I don't know why, but I picked out, I remember it to this day, I must have thought it was, no pun intended, the cat's meow. Hi, Janine. Hi, Michael. So nice to meet you. Yeah, this stuffed animal was so ugly, but I loved it. Anyway, it was my prize, my award for getting straight A's. I know it's so fun to have seen Kevin Payne earlier, so I know you know this story. There may be others in here besides me and my sisters that know it, but you've heard the milk stool speech. If you want to get into a good college, what? You gotta have the milk stool. There's 3 legs to a milk stool. There's your academics, your athletics, and your community service. So I know that, golly, there's probably a lot of us in here that could recite that speech, like the toothpaste speech. He had his shtick. So Dad, you were always there to support and encourage us. Thank you for not only teaching us to reach for the stars, but making us believe we actually could. Our dad was kind and compassionate. When he loved deeply. And I recognize just how fortunate my sisters and I are to have grown up in a household where we always knew we were loved. And Dad showed love not just through his words, but through his actions. When we were little kids, or youngish kids, my mom taught English to Japanese exchange students. They would come over from Japan and they'd live in some of the off-campus housing at Cal Poly. And my mom would go up every day and teach them English. And somehow we 3 finagled our way into helping. And this one particular year, we made some particularly close friends. And we were heartbroken when it was our time to say goodbye to them. They were leaving San Luis, and they were all going to go to Disneyland before getting on the airplane at LAX to go home. So lots of tears, and we finally went to bed with heavy hearts. And at 5 in the morning, we were jostled awake by my dad saying, "Get up and get in the car. We're going to go to Disneyland so you can spend one more day with your Japanese friends." And that was the kind of that guy that our dad, was. So thank you, Dad, for showing us what unconditional love looks like and feels like. Dad was someone you could always count on to be there when you needed him. I remember one time, I live up north by San Francisco, and one time I was driving to Arroyo Grande, and I had 2 of my 3 kids at that time. They were still little, in car seats and so forth. And I was driving down to see my mom and dad, and my car broke down, and Soul Dad, there's a prison there, if you know. And it was super dark, and there I am with these 2 little kids freaking out. I called my mom and dad, and my dad said, "Sit tight, Mom and I are jumping in the truck. We're gonna come get you." And they did. Hauled my broken car back here. One time, one of my kids landed in the hospital unexpectedly. And I was a wreck. I called my mom and dad. My dad said, "Sit tight, Mom and I are getting in the car right now. We'll be there within 4 hours." Next thing I know, I turned around. I was sitting in the hospital aisle, and I turned around, and my mom and dad were coming down the aisle, the corridor. It seems like between me and my sisters, I'm always the one having some sort of drama. Or maybe it's just that I'm more dramatic, or I actually learned last night that I just maybe live out loud a bit more. I don't know, but literally I'm always the one with something going on. And I called my dad for help a lot. So, Dad, I hope you're up there watching over me, because I'm not going to be able to call you to come save me anymore. So thank you, Dad, for always being there and for giving us a sense of safety and security. Our dad had a playful side to him, too. You've heard that Christmas was a big deal, and we'd celebrate not just with our immediate 5, but both sets of grandparents, the aunts and uncles, and all the kids. There's a big group of us. And every year, all of the kids would line up, and it was shortest to tallest. I just might make you chant it out, people. So we'd line up, and my dad, with that great big smile, he'd start out. "We want Santa. We want Santa. We want Santa. We want Santa. We want Santa." And then he'd say, "Go get him." And we'd run out to the Christmas tree. It's a good living legend. And one of my recent trips back home, my mom reminded me, and I don't know if this happened to you, but Mom just reminded me, and I'd forgotten or maybe blocked it out of my memory, this particular thing, because she reminded me that when I graduated from college, I went to UC Berkeley, so it wasn't like it was a small graduation ceremony. And my dad, when they called my name, he ran from the back up the center aisle, and he carried me off the stage. So I think maybe that one I did block from my memory. Yeah, our dad definitely knew how to be silly and have fun. He may not have shown it all the time and to everyone, but he definitely had a funny and silly side. So thanks, Dad, for teaching us to not take things too seriously and to remember that laughter truly is the best medicine. So thank you guys for laughing. And I thank you for giving our daughter Avery your sparkly blue eyes. From the second Avery was born, I said, oh my gosh, when she smiles, her eyes dance. And she got that from my dad. I'm so grateful that when I look at Avery that I'm reminded of my dad and that amazing bright smile that he had. I happened to be one of the statistics in Silicon Valley at the end of last year, which, if you follow the news, you know that means that I got laid off. And when I was laid off, I had no idea at the time what a gift that would be. Because for the first 3 months of this year, I was able to show up for my mom and dad in ways that I wouldn't have been able to if I had still been working. I'm so incredibly grateful for that gift of time. When I went back to work in April, I couldn't be here in person as much as I had been. So I'd call my dad just to hear his voice and hear him say with a smile in his voice, "Hi, Furby." And his nickname for me was Furby, and it also isn't that ugly stuffed animal with the big eyes. And it's a pretty long story, so I won't bore you with the details, but if you want to hear it in Criswell Hall, I'm happy to tell you. And I was, in early May, I was watching the Warriors-Lakers Western Conference semifinals, and I was hoping that he was watching it because, why? He loved basketball and really loved sports. And so I waited to halftime, but I wanted to call him because I just felt really compelled to call him, and I wanted to hear his voice. So I was fortunate, he answered the phone, picked it up. This was less than a week before he passed away. He picked up the phone and he said, "Hi, Furby." "I miss you, Dad. I will love you forever. And I will be patiently waiting until we meet again so that I can hear you say, 'Hi, Furby.'" Thanks, Father John.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here basically to say thank you to Mr. Larry for his love. I came to meet him because one of my classmates was the pastor at St. Joseph Church in Nipomo. And when I came to visit him, he told me about a friend of his who had wild pigs on his ranch. So I came for wild pig hunting. And after 3 attempts of not getting wild pig, I was told there's a guy over there on the hill who has actually real pigs. During that time, our school at St. Thomas Aquinas was going through a difficult time. We are almost going to close the school because we have no enrollment, and also we did not have enough money to support the school. So Mr. Wiemers donated 2 pigs to our school so we can have a barbecue and raise money for the school. So for the next 4 years, we got 2 pigs, 5 pigs, 6 pigs, and we were able to bring our school out of closing. Now it is a very successful school because of him. So he shared. So his love went beyond Arroyo Grande to Monterey Park to help the school there, St. Thomas Aquinas, so that it can get out of problems, and now we are very successful. And so many students in that school are now able to go to college because of the generosity that Mr. Larry gave to them. And also, I'm from Uganda. When I was talking to Mr. Larry about, we also have pigs in Uganda, our pigs are very small. And he told me how to make them bigger by giving them clean water, make sure that they're okay. So we had a small farm in Uganda, and he helped us move from a tiny little farm to now a big farm that sustains itself. He gave us some ideas. Together with the Rotary Club of Arroyo Grande, we were able to provide clean water to the whole village. So now we have water for the village, for the pigs, for the animals, so through him. So there are so many different ways in which Mr. Larry has been able to help us out. And for that, I'm here to give thanks. I want to conclude with a small story that I had since I was a kid. There's a group of a tribe in Kenya, next to us in Uganda. They are nomads. They raise animals and they travel looking for food and water for their animals. And these people believe that when somebody dies, they don't just die at one time. The dying is a process. And when they physically die, they enter into the world of the living dead. And they stay in the world of the living dead as long as there is somebody there who remembers them. Until the last person who remembers them dies, then the person finally dies. So it can take a long time. So Mr. Larry used to take a long time to die. Because not only here, just imagine all the kids in Uganda who know about him. We have his pictures over there in the village, so they know of him too. So until they die, he will be there for a long time. So I want to say thank you so much for the family and friends for your support. And also I'm here to give thanks to Mr. Larry and his family for helping us here in Monterey Park and also in Uganda so I can have a better chance at life. So thank you so much and may God bless you.
And we're going to offer an opportunity for a couple of you to share as Mike Coho brings the microphone. And I realize as I look at Pat, we can't go on forever and ever, amen. So we will have a couple of more stories, and many of these things you can share with the family in Criswell Hall when we leave this sanctuary, or in a note or in a card, and because these stories are part of the healing and helping as we continue to celebrate in the days and weeks ahead. Mike? Mike with the mic.
Thank you. You have to excuse me because I'm kind of emotional. I met Mr. Wiemers 1964. He was my shop teacher. I think that was his first job. And I remember when you said Matilda, I used to see him drive up in that old car. We became colleagues in education. And when he retired, he got into the pig business. I've been in the pig business all my life. And so, in a sense, we helped each other. And now that when he talked about that, I remember Mr. Wiemers calling me that he needed some pigs because he wanted to help his school down in Monterey Park. And so you talking about the car and you talking about that, now things connect of the things that he told me. And my family adopted Mr. Wiemers as part of our family because we've been really close. And so has Mrs. Wiemers been really close to my family. And I have great memories. Who would think that him being my teacher at one time, and then later on, we would connect again together and be so close. So I have great memories of Mr. Wiemers. I'm sorry, but it's, and I was not surprised that so many people are here because Mr. Wiemers, he talked the talk and he walked the walk. He's one of those persons that I will always know as Mr. Wiemers. I can't call him Larry because he's always been one of my best friends. I'm sorry, and thank you very much, and I'm sure all of you have great memories of Mr. Wiemers. Thank you.
My name is Tino Mancera from Oak Park Barbershop. I was his barber. This guy, I have some pig stories, but they weren't real though. They weren't real. It was pretty awesome. We actually at our barbershop, I have for Halloween I accidentally left a rat on the ground, so I left him, and he's still there to this day, So he comes over and he sees the rat, so he goes back home and he comes back with a little pig. So he puts them next over there, and we also have a water bowl and a dog bowl and a food bowl for the animals that come in because we're animal friendly. So it's funny because now we have 3 animals there that Larry brought, and after every haircut, regardless on who gave us the haircut, after he'd go, here's 20 for you, here's your tip, here's 20 for you, and here's 20 for you. Thank you guys. And he would, and that was every haircut. Now my father-in-law, he retired. My wife, she does color in the back, so it's just me. So sometimes she's out there getting lunch, and he'll come in, and after I'm done cutting his hair, here's 20 for you, and you make sure Terry gets 20 and Nicole gets 20. All the time. Then we got shut down. So, yeah, I ended up, pretty much, the barbershop, it stayed. We had our building, but the barbershop was closed, you know what I'm saying? So I started building bikes and stuff like that. And one time we came into the barbershop and there was an envelope on the ground. Picked it up, about $300. And it was a note that said, "We know it's hard, but keep your business open." Not just once, pretty much once a month. For the whole 2 years. We love that man at the barbershop. Those pigs will always be there too. Love you guys.
Well, I'm just so happy to be here. My name is Pamela Storton, and I'm not here on my behalf, but really on my daughter's behalf. Her name is Audrey Ponce. And Mr. Wiemers was my counselor in high school, and I moved away and then came home, and he became what he called her grandpa, and he put her right there with the rest of these children, adults here. She was his right-hand girl at the ranch for about 5 years. She learned to castrate pigs there, which is very handy now that she's a flight attendant with United. She could not be here today due to all that stuff going on in the airlines, so I'm really speaking for her. Great times out there, farrowing, late at night, saving pigs. He also was instrumental in her getting an internship in Kenya where she was able to go over and help an orphanage move from cows to pigs in order to become more sustainable. And I just so much appreciate not just having him in my life, but really I got to know him again, and he was a mentor and a friend and a great supporter of both my children, and I'll just miss him, but his spirit shines on. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Payne, already introduced by Pam, and yes, I have heard the three-legged stool story more than once. So Larry has been called Larry, father, coach, mentor. For me, he will always be Mr. Wiemers. He was my guidance counselor. And at 16, 17 years old with a full head of hair, I didn't have a vision for where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do, but Larry sure did. And I'm significantly just feel that I have been blessed with having his guidance, having him involved in my life. And unfortunately, at 16, 17 years old, you don't necessarily recognize the value of having a mentor like Mr. Wiemers in your life. So I'm going to go back to just my overall experience and that vision that he had for me. And I was being recruited pretty heavily for football, and I grew up in Wasna, and we had one channel on TV, NBC, and they only showed Notre Dame games, USC, and UCLA. Larry came to me, or Mr. Wiemers came to me and talked about Stanford University. And I was like, where the heck is Stanford University, and what is that all about? And he really focused on the fact that this was an opportunity of a lifetime. So much so that he had me meet him one morning during the summer prior to my senior year, and him and Sherry and Shelley and I got into his Ford Rambler station wagon, 3 on the tree, which I wasn't sure was going to make it all the way to the bay. But we did, and that was my first physical trip to Stanford University. We met with the coaching staff, and after our meeting with the coaching staff, I wanted to see the stadium. And so Mr. Wiemers drove us over to the stadium. We snuck in the gates because they were locked up, but we could squeeze through. Walked through the South Tunnel, which I still do today. And when you look at a stadium that holds close to 100,000 people, and you grew up in Aurora Grande, it was pretty doggone impressive. So when we got back, Mr. Wiemers made sure that I was over at the house studying for SATs with Sherry and Shelley and Matt Von Ruden here. I'm not sure that it really helped all that much, but it was good enough to get me in. I was able to participate at a higher level with the Pac-10 football team. John Elway was our quarterback my freshman year. Pam's university, the Bears, had the whole play with the debacle of them scoring the past 7 seconds and running over a band member. That was my first experience traveling in college football. So that experience, plus the fact that the relationships and the adventures that I had while I was there were worth a lifetime. Drove across country with 4 of my fraternity brothers, which there are a ton of stories about that, which I can't share with any of you here. More importantly, I met my wife, Christine, 33 years, 3 kids, have had a fantastic life, and that is all due to Mr. Wiemers. I'm very thankful. So God bless Mr. Wiemers and the Wiemers family.
I'm Joe Bradbury, and I taught auto shop at the high school for a number of years, and Larry Wiemers was my boss for a number of years and turned out to be probably the best boss that I ever had, in that he wanted the best program he could get, and so he provided us with all the assets we needed for that. I'm also the guy that Larry would call up in the middle of the week and say, would you like to come over on Saturday for dinner? Well, okay, sure. And so I would commit, and when I'd show up, he says, will you cook, please? And all of a sudden, there would be about 50 or 60 people there. I'm one of the cooks for the reunion, and that was fun. We enjoyed that. In our last few, I sat next to Larry in the timing stands at football games and basketball games for about 20 years. Very enjoyable. In the last several years, Larry had his own vocational scholarship. And there was 3 of us that sat on this committee to decide, who were to get the money. After it's all done, we ended up at Jocko's, and Larry bought lunch for us. But at the same time, one year, there was a table of probably 12 to 15 law enforcement people sitting next door to us. And little did they know, but Larry went over to the waitress and said, I will pay their whole bill, and he paid the whole thing. At that point, we walked out the door, and they never knew who paid the bill. But that was Mr. Larry. I truly miss Mr. Larry. I have lots more stories, but I'm not going to delay them for the time being. God bless you.
My name is Glenn Bradbury. This is going to be a hard one to tell. One of those stories with my dad was early on in the pigs. I was one of those kids that got a pig early. I earned my pig by digging ditches for the water lines. So I know about the hard work thing, and yeah, thanks, Dad, for volunteering me on that one. Could have just paid for it, but one of the things that he didn't say was he was also the guy that Larry would call when he needed some help with the pigs. And one time, Dad had just got a brand new pickup truck. I think he'd had it a couple of weeks. And Larry calls him up, hey, you want to go to San Jose and pick up a pig? I bought a pig, it's being flown in. I think it was one of the early boars maybe, I'm not sure. What was it? Babe? Babe was the name of the pig. So Dad, being Dad, yeah, sure, we'll take my new truck. So they jump in the truck, they got a pet carrier for this pig, probably a 40 or 50 pound pig, I'm guessing at that time. They drive up to San Jose, everything's good. They get there, they get the pig, they go through whatever the rigmarole is to pick up a pig from an airport, which is probably not very common, but it happens. Then they get the pig, and Dad's, I think at this point, still assuming the pig's gonna ride in the back of the truck, and they're gonna drive home. But you can't put the pig in the back of the truck because it might catch a cold. And it was raining. And so they put the pig in the car carrier in the back seat of the brand new pickup and drove home from San Jose, enjoying all of the aromas that a pig will generate on its trip, which was not really happy about flying anyway. And that's that's one of the things that was always one of the best stories about Larry and the pigs and my dad. And that truck always did have a very interesting aroma when it would get kind of hot. I don't think it ever really recovered from that. So, but that's one of the best stories about Larry and my dad and the two of them. And they spent a ton of time doing a lot of things over the years with those silly pigs. So.
How do you move from what should be a standing ovation for Larry to a simple prayer? We are blessed to have known him. You have one more? Okay, we'll go one more.
I don't want to interrupt a prayer. I'm Laurie Gregory Johnson, and my parents met Larry and Pat in the late 60s, and the Wiemers became very great supporters of my mom when my dad died early, and Pat and my mom have remained dear friends through the years. My mom couldn't be here, so I wanted to make sure to represent our whole family. I really wanted to talk about the ripples of Mr. Wiemers' toothpaste story. I taught upper elementary for 35 years, and every first day of school, I would bring in tubes of toothpaste, and we would do the toothpaste activity and start the year off with, be careful what you say. And I have had students come back and report to me that they also do that with their students, my kids who have become teachers. So the ripples continue.
Well, thank you all for your sharing. We enter into these parting moments from this sanctuary with this prayer of thanksgiving for Larry's life, followed by the Lord's Prayer and a video presentation that you'll see on the screen above you. And then we'll be moving into Criswell Hall, and I'll be escorting the family out first, and we'll be exiting from front to back. Let us pray. Loving God, as we commend to your love and care Larry Wiemers, we're grateful for the privilege of having shared life with him. Before he was ours, he was yours. For all that he has given us to make us what we are, and for that of him which lives and grows in each of us, and for his life that in your love will never end, we give you thanks. As now we offer him lovingly back into your arms, comfort us in our loneliness, strengthen us in our weakness, and give us courage to face the future unafraid. Draw those of us who remain in this life closer to one another, and give us to know that peace and joy which is eternal life. Amen.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For
And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
and he will reign